after a wild week 10 in the National Football League where we did go 5 for 5 in best bets. That put us at 31 and 50 on the year, and a week where we went 9 and 5 in the money line. That put us at 101 and 51 on the year. This week is a little bit tricky, in my opinion, when it comes to bets. There's a lot of games this week that I just flat out did not want to touch. Of course, there are three massive football games this Thursday and then this Sunday in the National Football League. The first one, Thursday Night Football. The Washington Commanders and my buddy Austin Arnold was on this show yesterday as we previewed this matchup between his Commanders and my Philadelphia Eagles. Then, of course, you have Sunday in the 1 o'clock window. You have the Baltimore Ravens, led by Lamar Jackson, who the one division opponent that he has struggled against his entire career, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They play in Pittsburgh. And then, of course, Mahomes, Josh Allen on location, the NFL Today on CBS, 4:25 Eastern Time. We also have a good Sunday night game between the Bengals and Chargers out at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. So without further ado, let's get into it. I already mentioned here Commanders, Eagles. You guys know if you listened to my interview with Austin Arnold yesterday, we talked about it. This game feels like a 27-24 game on either side. The Commanders always play the Philadelphia Eagles like it is their Super Bowl. They match up very well with Philadelphia. And now that they have a quarterback and a new head coach and a new regime, they feel like they obviously can come into the link, and if they win this game, they will have complete destiny control over the NFC East. But the same can be said about Philadelphia and Jalen Hurts, who have not lost since week 4 bye week. They're obviously running the football more with Saquon Barkley, play action pass, getting Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown going with Dallas Goedert over the middle of the field. And until last week's first half against Dallas, Jalen Hurts did a better job at taking care of the football. But I think the biggest story for Philadelphia during this 5-game win streak is not the offense. It is the emergence of the secondary on the defensive end with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, who will, of course, replace Avante Maddox in the slot. They've completely changed the way that Vic Fangio and that defense is being played, along with Kobe Dean and Zach Bond at the linebacker level. On top of that, you got Jalen Carter, Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, Ajoro at that defensive tackle spot to go with Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Bryce Huff, etc. off the edge. It's going to be a very close game. It's going to be a very good game. I think, again, the improvement of Philadelphia's secondary with Marshawn Lattimore, very questionable, may not play Thursday night here. I think that the Eagles playmakers will just overall make a play more than the Commanders. I think Jaden Daniels will play well. Him and Jalen Hurts are probably at a draw at this point in this game. This is a rare Thursday night game where I think you give the home team the advantage here. I like Philadelphia. Again, I'm not going to touch it. You know, I did not want to bet this game because these are two bad teams and it's going to be a miserable game. But I am from the Cleveland, Ohio area, as you guys know. And to be honest with you, I like the Browns to go into New Orleans to upset the Saints. I think, Darren Rizzi in New Orleans, they got their interim head coach boost last week. And the biggest factor here for me for Cleveland is they are coming off their bye. And, will Kevin Stefanski, Ken Dorsey come up with some tricks in the offensive backfield? Jameis Winston, as we know, also goes back to New Orleans. I think after having a bad game against the Chargers, Jameis will bounce back. He will have a good game against the Saints defense that I don't think will be quite the same without Marshawn Lattimore. I think New Orleans got up last week because it was an interim head coach and it was their arch rival Atlanta. I think they'll play down to Cleveland. This could be where Nick Chubb maybe has his first real breakout game of the season. Jim Schwartz and that defense off a bye will lock down Derek Carr and that Saints secondary. I think the Browns upset New Orleans. Getting into this Baltimore Pittsburgh game. Now, the Steelers are dogs by 3 points. I was considering taking Pittsburgh with the points, but again, I could see a scenario here where Baltimore does win by a touchdown. Lamar Jackson does get over his Steelers woes. He's 1-4 in his career against Pittsburgh. Now, he's also missed time against Pittsburgh, whether it was due to COVID, other illnesses, injuries, etc. And I've been saying it not only on this show, but on my debate show I do in collaboration with Voltage Live with Josh Unger. Listen, I realize the Pittsburgh Steelers are 7-2, and yes, they beat the Washington Commanders last week in Washington, but this is what I expected Pittsburgh to be to start the season. To me, this is a real test for them. Their last 8 games now. They have 6 divisional games, and they have Kansas City and Philadelphia sandwiched in between there. That is a real, 3-5 ending if they're lucky, in my opinion, because I think Cleveland will give Pittsburgh everything they can handle. And Russell Wilson only completed 50% of his passes last week. It's not like he was lighting the world on fire. He just made 2 incredible throws to George Pickens and Mike Williams to win the game. This is going to be a very physical, very brutal game. Both teams are going to be up for it. Baltimore has gone through the wars already. They played Cleveland once. They played Cincinnati twice. So this is their fourth division game. I think that could be advantage Baltimore knowing what's coming. And again, I think Lamar Jackson looks to keep his MVP case going up here. I think the Ravens do win. It probably is by 3 or 4, somewhere along there. I think it's a very close contest. Again, this is just a game that I just want to watch. I'll take Minnesota again, -5.5. No, Sam Darnold is not playing well, but you know what? He's playing Will Levis and the Tennessee Titans, who are not very good. I think the Vikings can win this thing by a touchdown. I get they scored 4 field goals last week against Jacksonville. I think they're hearing the noise. Tennessee's secondary is not very good. I think this is a big game for Minnesota offensively. I think they bounce back. I'll pick them to cover -5.5 against a lowly Tennessee Titans team. The spread here is huge. I'm not going to bet it, though. I think Detroit could easily cover 13.5. They played poorly against Houston. Dan Campbell is going to be in there all week banging them about how poorly they played, even though they overcame adversity. For Jacksonville, Mac Jones looked bad last week. Doug Peterson's about to get fired. They're a train wreck. Now, saying that, Jacksonville has been in the most one-score games in the NFL this year, and they've lost almost all of them. So maybe they're not as bad as their record says they are, yet their offense can't move the ball. It's very confusing. Maybe Jacksonville comes out, they play Detroit well. They forced Jared Goff off his spot a little bit. Because they're actually pretty good against the run. They're not good against the pass at all. Maybe Ben Johnson gets a little bit too pass happy here. Maybe Detroit's offense doesn't run on the machine that we would expect it to be at. The Lions are going to win this game. The biggest question is if they cover. If you cover by 2 touchdowns, you dominate a football team. Again, I just think there are better numbers on the board here. Green Bay at Chicago. Now, Green Bay -5.5. If I were going to bet it, that would be the side. Green Bay is coming off a bye. And again, I don't love it for the other team, even if they're desperate when another team, especially with a smart offensive coach like Matt LaFleur, is coming off a bye. And history will tell you that Green Bay just owned Chicago over the last 3 decades. It doesn't matter who the quarterback matchup is. But we know the Bears have fired offensive coordinator Shane Waldron, and you've heard my rant on the Bears. You heard me talk about the fact that a lot of this to me is not on Caleb Williams. You watch the film, there's nobody open. The offensive line is not blocking. But do the Bears go back to basics, right? Do they simplify things? Does Caleb Williams play better? Do they start getting the ball in the hands of DJ Moore in a tough matchup against Jair Alexander? Does Roma Dunze start to merge a little more? Do they start running the football more? They went away from the run the last couple of weeks. Does DeAndre Swift get more involved? So all of that, there's questions on. I think there's possibility that, Chicago, Matt Eberflus knows he has to turn this ship around. They started 4-2. They're now 4-6. That El Mary might have completely destroyed this football team, and for Eberflus to save his job. Again, I thought along with Shane Waldron, Eberflus could have been the one to go out the door on Tuesday morning. There was reports out there that some veteran offensive players told Chicago to start Tyson Bagent and let Caleb Williams sort of sit down and learn the game for a week or two. I don't think we're at that point yet with the Bears unless Green Bay blows them out, which is a certain possibility. But I think the Bears, they're going to fight hard. They're going to find a way, I think, to keep this close. I'm giving Chicago the benefit of the doubt here for one more week that I think they could cover this 5.5. So I like Green Bay to win the game. I'm not going to touch the line. Vegas at Miami. If y'all remember the last time these two teams played, Miami was a huge favorite, 8, 9 points. Vegas covered. They almost stole one. And again, Vegas is coming off their bye week. Now, for Miami, the question really is, did they save their season? They dominated the Rams defensively. They held them to 5 field goals. A Rams offense with Matthew Stafford, a healthy offensive line, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp did not get in the end zone. Tyreek Hill has not had a good year, and neither is Jalen Waddle. But Tua did play well, for the most part, outside of the interception, kept the ball out of harm's way. And again, it really was a defensive game. For me, Miami, they can beat up on bad teams. They just don't feel like the same team they were a few years ago. I have no idea what I'm going to get out of Vegas week to week. Again, I think Antonio Pierce, he's going to get those guys to play hard. They have 2 weeks to prepare for Miami, which I think is a factor here. Could Miami blow them out? Yes. Could it be closer than what the spread indicates? Yes, which is why I'm not touching this game. I think New England, they got a big win last week against Chicago. I think they sort of fall back down to earth. Rams, a bad loss against Miami. I think they bounce back. I think this is your blowout of the weekend here. I'm taking the Rams -4.5 to cover against New England, which even though Drake May has played well, and you could say, out of Caleb Williams and Jane Daniels and Bo Nix, Drake May is getting better, where Caleb Williams is certainly getting worse. But New England still does not have a lot of pieces for him to work around. And again, I think the Rams, they're now at this point to me, that was a bad loss to Miami. They're probably out of NFC West contention, but they can still make a run for it in the playoffs and in the wild card here if they get hot. They take on Philadelphia next week on a Sunday night. So this is a must win for me if I am Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay. Joe Flacco against Aaron Rodgers. Two old quarterbacks. Jets are favored by 4.5. Flacco will throw a bad Jets defense since Robert Saleh got fired. Some interceptions. And that's my take. The Jets will probably win this game, and it doesn't change my outlook for them on the season. They're a disaster. And for Indianapolis, they're a disaster too. Joe Flacco has not been good this year. Anthony Richardson has obviously not been good this year. The replacement of going from Richardson to Flacco has not worked out. And the Colts seem like they're a team that's sputtering their wheels here in week 11. Okay, sorry to my cousin Derek and the Seahawks fans that I know that listen to me, at least on YouTube, but I'm taking San Francisco. I just think that they own Seattle. Yes, Seattle is coming off a bye. And yes, that game, the Thursday night game they ran in week 6. To me, San Francisco dominated the game. Seattle got back into it with a kickoff return and a fumble, and San Francisco not able to execute. I still don't think the Niners are the same team they were a few years ago. We saw the infighting with the long snapper and Deebo Samuel, and obviously Jake Moody making kicks. But for whatever reason, this Niners team just matches up very well with Seattle. I like the number here. I think they can win by a touchdown. I'm taking San Francisco -6.5. This next game was the debate I was having with myself in terms of what my fifth bet was going to be on the board. I was back and forth between Houston and Dallas Monday night, but ultimately I'm going to take Atlanta here. I'm taking them +2.5. I like them as underdogs going into Denver. And Atlanta has had a good week, bad week, good week, bad week, good week, bad week kind of year. Bo Nix is getting better for Denver. Atlanta's defense is not great. I think Denver is building confidence week in and week out. But I think Kirk Cousins is the type of quarterback who can go on the road here to Denver. I think they can run the ball with Bijan Robinson. And I think Atlanta wants to show they are the team to beat in the NFC South. New Orleans taking on Cleveland, whoop-de-doo. Carolina and Tampa are both on byes. So Atlanta here has an opportunity to extend their lead even more. I do think Denver is the more desperate team because they're fighting for a wild card spot. These are two very evenly close teams to me. I think Atlanta does have more talent at the skill positions, though. Ultimately, right now, I'll take Kirk Cousins over Bo Nix. And then obviously, the big game, 425 CBS. We talked about it, Mahomes, Josh Allen. Buffalo was favored by 2.5. Now you guys know I have predicted for weeks that I thought the Buffalo Bills would be the best team to knock off Kansas City because even though Josh Allen has struggled in the postseason to knock off Patrick Mahomes, very Tom Brady, Peyton Manning-esque. This is our Tom Brady, Peyton Manning rivalry. In my opinion, Buffalo has done a good job in the regular season over the past few years at beating Kansas City and sometimes soundly even in Kansas City. But I think the difference in this game will be Amari Cooper may not play for Buffalo. Dalton Kincaid is very iffy to play for Buffalo. Coleman, their rookie receiver, is not going to play for Buffalo. And Kansas City has DeAndre Hopkins. They have Travis Kelce, Kareem Hunt, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. I think the Chiefs are sick and tired of hearing about this is going to be the week they lose. They are dogs by more than a point. Remember, they were dogs to San Francisco. I took Kansas City's side in that game. Um, the Chiefs here are dogs against Buffalo. Part of me feels like the Bills are going to be so emotional. They're going to play so well. This is more than a bigger regular season game. Because of this current situation in the AFC, if Kansas City were to defeat Buffalo, they are on the fast track. They're going to get the number one seed in the AFC. If Buffalo wins this game, then it gets really tight. Buffalo has two losses. Kansas City has one loss. Buffalo would have the head-to-head tiebreaker over the squads. So this game means so much to Buffalo. I think in the end, I think it's a little bit of a lower scoring game than people think, like 24-20, 23-20. I don't think we get in the high 30s here. Buffalo needs to use James Cook to run the football, and they need to have Josh Allen use his legs. They need to really ball control this, be conservative, force Patrick Mahomes to be patient and to wait on the sideline. In the end, I think he just makes one more play than Josh Allen, and Josh Allen, without his weapons, will fall here. This was a game that I had circled. I want Buffalo going into it to be the first one to knock off Kansas City, especially with the way the Chiefs have played. And we know from experience that when you flirt with all those one possession games, one of them is going to bounce back to bite you. Again, I think what hurts Buffalo here is the injuries. I'll take Cincinnati. I think that they are 1.5 point dogs. They will win outright against the Chargers. The Chargers have beat up the last 3 weeks on the Saints, Browns, and Titans. This is a major step in weight class. Again, even though Cincinnati is 4-6, they can put points on the board. I think this will be a great test for the Chargers secondary to see how they deal with Jamar Chase, that Bengals offense. Chase Brown has started to get going in the run game. And again, the Chargers, like if they lose this game, they can still be in a wild card position in the AFC. Burrow has talked about, when they fell to Philadelphia, we can only afford two more losses the rest of the way. One of those losses was to Baltimore. I think they'll probably pick up a loss against Pittsburgh and let those two teams split. So this is a must-win game for Cincinnati, in my opinion. Again, I think it matters more. I think the Bengals defense, you know, they've been good against the run this year, and the Chargers don't have the most elite weapons on the outside. Herbert is going to have to throw more than he did last week against Tennessee. I think it's a very back and forth game. Comes down to who has the ball last. Smells like a 27-24 type game. I like Joe Burrow with the ball last. Cincinnati's fortunes finally turn in one-score games. Chargers, even with Jim Harbaugh, Chargers this game. Cincinnati wins. And I think Houston will beat Dallas. I think Dallas will probably play better. They'll come out. They were embarrassed last week at home against Philadelphia. They're in prime time. It's the Battle of Texas. They're not going to want to get embarrassed again. But I think on the same token, Will Anderson may be back for Houston. Sounds like Nico Collins is going to be back for Houston. And this is a Texans team that is getting drilled in the media for not scoring in the second half against Detroit. This is a Texans team that people like myself are saying are not the same team as a year ago. CJ Stroud is not the same as a year ago. They are really a Joe Mixon or bust offense. And I think Dallas is just defeated. I think Dallas is going to go into a soft tank here. Again, could they play hard? Um, is there a world where Cooper Rush plays better and they play emotional and they even cover the spread or, dare I say, win the game? Sure, it's the NFL. It's any given Sunday. But I think there's a more likely scenario Houston blows out Dallas than there is Dallas winning the game. So to recap, my money line picks here for week 11 of the 2024 NFL season are I like Philadelphia at home Thursday night against Washington, Cleveland on the road at New Orleans, Baltimore on the road at Pittsburgh, Minnesota on the road at Tennessee, Detroit at home over Jacksonville, Green Bay on the road at Chicago, Miami at home, they will defeat Vegas, Los Angeles Rams on the road, go to New England and win, Jets will defeat the Colts at home, Niners at home over San Francisco, and then Atlanta on the road against Denver, Kansas City on the road against Buffalo, Cincinnati on the road against the Chargers, and Houston on the road Monday night against Dallas. Some fascinating matchups for week 11. And speaking of week 11, my five best bets for week 11 of the 2024 NFL season are I like Minnesota laying 5.5 on the road against Tennessee. I also take the Rams laying 4.5 on the road against New England. I like San Francisco laying 6.5 at home against Seattle. I like Atlanta getting 2.5 on the road at Denver. And I like Cincinnati getting 1.5 on the road, quote unquote. Though could be a Bengals home game in Los Angeles against the Chargers. We went 5-5 in best bets last week. Can we make it another 5-4-5 week? Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.